networking, negotiation, customer care, and work readiness for recent graduates. She has over 25 years of professional HR experience, with 10 years of those as a specialist in an organization development, leadership capacity development, and supporting institutional strengthening. She designs and supports the implementation of change management processes through the sustainability plans. She has also solid competencies in organization restructuring, remuneration structuring, design of customized training programs, and strategic HR management advisory. Maggie's personal mission and the HR Icon mission is to develop people and organizations reach their maximum performance so that they are able to transform the world. Rotarians, Retractors, and guests, please welcome me with our guest speaker this afternoon, Maggie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moses, for that very kind introduction. It's always such a pleasure to be back at the Rotary Club, Kampala West. Among so many friends and so many colleagues, I was very happy to find that Susan Ajok, with whom I go back a very long way away, is now the current president. But I see Ambassador Bernadette, past president. I see Katie. I see Jesse, former student of mine in public speaking. So if Jesse is speaking well, please know where you're supposed to give credit. I see my friend from South Africa, Washango Kimani, a guest here. But I just love coming back here. I really love coming back to this club to spend time among people who are really interested in all kinds of discussions, exploring ideas from so many different perspectives. I really appreciate that. I also warmly welcome all the guests that have come from the public who spared time to join us. I don't take that for granted, because you bring into this space where we celebrate ideas a higher level of diversity into our community. So I appreciate you, and I look forward to sharing with you what I have learned along the way. And I also look forward to hearing your views. The topic I've been given today is economic development. That's the topic that I got. But when I looked at it, I'm not an economist. And I decided to give it a twist from a background that I'm familiar with, and that is the people background. So I'm looking at economic development from a human capital perspective. And that is why I redefined the topic to, it is not economic development when some people are left out. This is a quote that there's a couple of interactions in the background. I think we should ask everybody to mute their mic. So I'll just go back a step. I speak to economic development from a human capital perspective. And that is why the quote by Jack Kemp, a former US congressman, really inspired me when he said, "It is not economic growth if some people are left out." But what is interesting is at some point in my life, especially prior to 2020, I really didn't give that any mind, and I could have easily argued the opposite. Economic development is economic development, yeah? High buildings, investors coming in, many banks opening up, telecommunication companies all over the place. That was development to me. And it would have been that way if I didn't meet this quote by Jack Kemp. Today, we see a huge percentage of our youth population unemployed, many people living under the breadline, and it forces me to think in a different way. Let's go now to the year 2020. The year 2020, for me, was the year of unleashing the flying dragon. Round about March last year, actually, even maybe we could go back to December 2019, the dragon came out. It came flying a huge dragon with fires blazing from mouth and nostrils. It flew all over the globe, and we saw firsthand the carnage in its wake. It then became clear to us that trying to outrun this dragon was not going to be a very useful exercise, nor a very wise decision. Judging from how volatile things were, it meant it was time to actually change strategies and policies and look at things in a different way. Because everybody around us was dying, we started to think in terms of survival, not only for self, but survival of everyone else, using company money, using business money for the survival of our employees and the communities around us as far as possible. If you are one of those people that failed to recognize the needs and the demands of the changing times and didn't respond to the midnight cries of your people, and by people I mean right up to house help, it simply meant you are going to be the next in line. I'm talking about the global COVID-19 pandemic. It brought the entire world, and especially the world leaders, face to face with some pretty harsh realities about the insufficiencies of our current model of economic development. What the pandemic ended up doing was to spit into our capitalist faces a world completely out of economic balance, that the difference between the poor communities and the wealthier communities was so blunt. And we saw it this way. Policies that were made at world level to safeguard the world and to keep survival rates higher, policies like lockdowns, movement restrictions, social distancing, hand washing, mask wearing, were only meaningful to the affluent, and that's how they stayed alive. But the same policies were totally alien and impractical to the poor communities living at the periphery of our cities in informal settlements, crammed into tiny, tiny living quarters with no access to water or sanitation facilities, with no access to primary medical care. Actually, let's take the word primary, with no access to any medical care of any sort, or even access to a decent daily meal. So what we saw on the news, on our WhatsApp clips and all the social media platforms, were these people who are not heeding to these policies, coming out into the streets and actually fighting armed guards so that they could get access to their little shops in the markets and in the places where they had their little trading businesses going on. We saw them in the streets during curfews and lockdown. I saw this on Johannesburg, in Nigeria. These guys were giving us a message that they had nothing to lose. They had nothing to lose by being out there. Wouldn't you do the same if you're living in a very tight space, sharing a water cup? You can't even talk about COVID. These people share water cups, they share plates, forks, knives, and spoons, they share cigarettes, and in the night, they huddle tightly together on a single mattress. This is how these people survive. So if we are all living in the same economy, how are these people expected to be a part of the population that was going to help flatten the curve when they live like this? If you and I were to go into their living quarters, at what point do you think would we be able to say that our countries are experiencing an economic boom, that we're experiencing economic growth, and that we're experiencing development? Clearly, something needed to be done. When we came to that point and we saw for ourselves the glaring social economic deprivations in the populations in many segments of the populations around us, and especially us in the developing countries. Something needed to be done. For me, George Bernard Shaw puts it very nicely. He says in one of his quotes, he says that the worst sin towards our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That is the essence of inhumanity. And that is what we're looking at as far as our economic development model was concerned. We were looking at accelerating rates of youth employment. We're looking at the low levels of human capital development. We're looking at accelerating rates of population growth. And all of these are widening the economic gap, the socio-economic gap. And the truth is, this gap does not only impact the poor people who we think are the ones caught in the eye of the storm. Well, it might appear like that right now, but they are not the only ones. These widening disparities that we were seeing, especially last year and this year, and some of us actually saw these disparities in earlier times, even before COVID, they will come back to bite us. They will affect those of us who are sitting in our air-conditioned, carpeted offices, attending virtual Zoom meetings or Google Meet or whatever you call it. It will affect us. So as corporate businesses, SMEs, even smaller enterprises, all of us who sit down to focus on profits, we will no longer be able to do that at the expense of the wider community around us. Why? Because the continued existence and proliferation of the social economic injustices and inequalities that we have just talked about will pull back whatever economic growth we are making right now. 10 years ago, as far as 10 years ago, two scholars, Michael Porter and Mark Kramer, wrote in the Harvard Business Review of January/February 2011. I kept this little article for a very long time, and I remembered it when I was approached by one of my friends, past President Katie, to come and speak to Rotary Club Kampala West. And I remember this article where these two business thought leaders shared their big idea on how to reinvent the capitalist model of development. Their big idea was essentially about what they call shared value. It's a new concept. And if I could just explain shared value to them meant that businesses should create value, not only for their shareholders who have invested in it, but also value for the broader communities within which those businesses work. At that time in 2011, and even much earlier, they were convinced that the state of capitalism was under siege, and therefore they posited the concept of shared value to help us redefine capitalism in a new way that helps us shift mindset from profit to a genuine focus on well-being and the development of people and the society. Mistrust in the capitalist model became even more evident after the COVID-19 experiences. Because after that time, many of us came out openly to discuss this model. Which direction was it taking us in? Can we speak about economic development when most of our people don't even have access to water? We wanted them to wash their hands. But what were we doing about this? So in their discussion of their big idea of shared value, Michael Porter and Mark Kramer were nudging businesses in a direction of widening their previously narrow way of looking at value creation, which was in terms of financial performance and focusing on profit margins, to a broader way of looking at people. They are nudging the world to seriously look at the well-being of customers, suppliers, and the communities within which they operate. If businesses, for example, we can take Uganda as an example, businesses are going into mineral exploration. nudged by this big idea of shared value, we shouldn't just be looking at the profits and how much gold or oil we're taking out, but we should be looking at how our communities gain. If we look at two bottom lines, the financial bottom line and the human capital development bottom line, that is how humanity is going to survive to the next generation. It then means that all the business owners, all the leaders, national leaders, entrepreneurs, everybody needs to rethink the course they are on, because we will remain on the vicious cycle and it will pull us all back. In that article, Michael Porter and Mark Kramer asked a very pertinent question to this discussion. It goes like this: how could businesses ever think that shifting their production to locations where wages were so cheap was a sustainable solution to their competitiveness? Imagine that. That is how we thought, and that's how many of them thought and still think. But in response to this, when I was reading through the SDG goals, there's a man who responded to this very well. He said, I pity the man who wants to wear a shirt so cheap that it broke the back of the man who grew the cotton to sew this shirt. So what are we saying here? We are saying here that we're looking for a mindset change. No more breaking of people's backs so that you can maximize your profits. Yes, there is a need to make profits, but right now there's a more urgent need to move to action to impact the lives of the communities around us. We can start working in our current physical locations, or in the industries within which we do our businesses, or in the communities, in the rural areas, anywhere in the nation, anywhere in the country. We can do this through the establishment of strong partnerships with civil society organizations, community-based organizations, social enterprises, so that we can achieve impact and thereby sustainable development, not just for us as the enterprises, but also for the people. We can also do this by creating socially rooted businesses where the business platform, the platform that is making the money, and the social platform, the platform that is giving out the money, are at par and have got an equal focus on performance margins. The platform that makes the money and the platform that looks after people have both got to be sustainably run. So without this level of change in the lives of people around us, in the lives of everyone in our societies, it's going to be virtually impossible to make real economic progress, the kind of economic progress that takes everybody in. Economic growth in terms of human capital development, in order to achieve the UN Human Development Indicators, will only begin to happen when all the businesses that are in the market right now are channeling their wealth, their resources, and their opportunities in such a way that it trickles down to penetrate communities at the periphery and right to the grassroots levels in our rural communities. This is the only way that we are going to empower people. This is the only way that new possibilities are going to be opened up so that we can create a fresh wave of economic, social, and human capital development. I know a number of companies are already in this area. So as I end my talk, for us to go into a discussion, a question and answer session, I just want to re-echo the current plight. When I'm at a loss of words, Luganda comes out. Abana baffe, babula. What I'm saying here is there's a whole generation of young people behind us that is perishing And why do they perish? They perish because there are no opportunities for them to plug into the same economy that you and I work in and get decent work. They have got no opportunities for decent work. If you walked around town and going to the markets, going to Nakawa market, for example, only about maybe 20%, 25% of the people milling in that area are actually selling. The rest of the people are touts, parking cars, carrying things, and doing all sorts of odd jobs. No decent work. With no decent work, they cannot enhance their value as part of Uganda's human capital or as part of any country's human capital. But the good news is I have met a number of business executives over the years of my consulting, a number of business leaders that I have met who have already joined the journey of building and running their businesses on a socially rooted model. It may not be it may not be very overt or very clearly expressed as a socially rooted model, but I've been in spaces where I have seen business executives make decisions that are clearly about the welfare and the well-being of the people that work for them and the people around them. I've joined this journey as well. We have started to consult the experts on the regulatory environment for such business models that are both business and socially rooted models. I was told it's very difficult and it's not yet very clear, but the consultations are ongoing. But one thing that I do know, and I know that for sure, sooner or later, as more businesses begin to get a grip on the big idea of shared value, government supported by professionals like you, professionals out there, technocrats, and other people, they will come together, and I know they will be able to formulate policy that will support the concept of shared value sitting on two platforms rather than work against it. Finally, whether we call it bleeding heart conservatism, whether we call it capitalism with a social conscience, or populist conservatism, it is the right thing to do. This is the right time to do it, and we are the last people to help do it. This is Jack Kemp in one of his famous speeches. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. We're now going to get into a question and answer session. I'd love to hear from you. What are your views, and where are you speaking from? Your areas of specialization, it should all come here so that we celebrate the wealth of ideas we have around the table.
Wow, Maggie, that is so thought-provoking. I can hear people giving you a round of applause. Members, we're getting into the question and answer session. I had invited members to post their questions in the chat, and I don't see anything yet. But also I can invite members, anyone who has a question right away, to kind of also raise their hand or unmute and ask their question right away. As I wait for questions to come in, Maggie, you've thrown several phrases in there that I think get us thinking in many directions. And one of those that really hit me hard was welfare and well-being of our people matters. How we are in different spaces doing different things. What is it that we should be doing better about well-being and welfare without really compromising on the quality of business? I know we are in hard times, but I think well-being and welfare resonate with everybody. Even us as individuals, we would like that our own well-being and welfare are addressed wherever we are. Maggie?
Thank you very much, President Susan. Yes, welfare, well-being are important. How do we balance it with business, with the business bottom line? I mean, you realize very well that if you don't look after your people, if you don't look after their welfare, if we don't look after their mental health right now, if we don't look after their emotional well-being, the businesses we're trying to push are no more. And we actually, on a number of boards that I sit on, we actually came to a place where we're sitting with the board members and actually saying that, you know what, we cannot ignore what the people are going through. We are going to put out a couple of mechanisms to help them work through this period of 2020 and 2021. And it had a very interesting, start. I was sitting somewhere and one of the CEOs was saying that, you know what, I got a call from the receptionist. She's got no one to talk to. She's feeling very lonely and she is scared. She had recently lost a family member to COVID. And I have a feeling she'd probably called the HR manager and other colleagues and they were asleep. And it's very late. But she had the guts to call her CEO. And the CEO was also in the space of actually seeing the need and responding correctly. Speaks to her and calms her down, gives her assurance. And the very next day, they had a helpline going, they had an employee assistance program going, they had names of counselors, they had names of doctors, they shared them with us, and I could actually see that this is what needs to be done for now. You see, businesses go through times of volatility, and they also go through times of stability. Now, in times of volatility, it is time to cover yourself and cover your employees so that we can all make it through the volatile periods and then eventually get to times of stability. In times of stability, if you're just looking at bottom line for yourself and your employees are also able to take care of themselves, that is fine. That goes well. But when we are looking at, waves going up and down, it's like a ship that is being buttressed at sea. It is time to actually cover everyone on your team, and then the bottom line will look after itself because you're now looking after your people. I don't know if I've answered your question, Suzanne.
Yes, you have. I don't know. Yes, you have, I think, very well. And I think the more we engage with you, I think the more we also challenge to think about our future generations. One of the comments also, I think one of the statements you made, pardon my Luganda, you said, "Abana bafe babula," and the meaning our generation is perishing, and we all know that. I think for our young people, we have lost almost 2 years of their productive lives, and here we are talking about a very powerful topic, It's not economic empowerment when some are left out. What would, in your opinion, what would be the best? What would you encourage Rotarians? What would you encourage custodians of young people to begin to inculcate just the thought of, trying to get into that space, trying to be able to, get involved in economic empowerment? Because we often think, when we talk about economic empowerment, we are thinking about the retirees, those who are already saving and all that. But I think economic empowerment should be speaking to everybody and could possibly be a conversation we start with young people as early as possible. What are your thoughts?
Thank you very much, President. Rotarian James Serofusa has had his hand up. Maybe he wants to answer the question or even ask something or make a comment. Can James come in?
James, ask. Sorry, I didn't see his hand.
Thank you, Rotarian President, and thank you, Rotarian Maggie. I didn't know you were actually an economist. Maybe you've lived with economists for long, it has rubbed off, but you are very good at that too. As I was listening to you, Maggie, I got depressed. Because you are picking it up, you are picking up a real issue. And what's first crossed my mind, that how do we get post-COVID-19 pandemic, how do we reconcile production economics with the distribution economics? When the productive units are struggling for their very existence, they are gasping for air. How do we get them to think about those good things? And post-COVID-19, the gap has and will indeed widen. Not only do we now focus on the marginalized, but the productive are being rendered unproductive because the productive units have literally gone under. So what depressed me was that things may get a lot worse before they get better. No consolation. Thank you.
Thank you, James. There's another hand that's up. Should we answer
yes,
that question?
Bernadette can ask a question, then you respond to those three. Bernadette, please unmute and ask your question.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to have you back. And I hope you are going to completely come back. Now, my question is, in the different forums that you are in, I'm just thinking aloud. It looks like our government needs a lot of help. But that's not me in that picture. Has there been any thought that we should now trying to put up different think tanks to help government think of how we can get out of the current quagmire that we are in? In education, we need help. In production, private sector and all that, we need help. In agriculture, we need help. Because whatever our government does it a bit haphazardly and half-heartedly. For example, the other day I was hearing something on TV about sugarcane growers. Some of them have been chased from Bibanja. Their sugarcane is being grown in a large scale, but there's no buyer. The factory which is nearest to them, which they say they should produce for that factory, is overwhelmed, doesn't take them anymore. Why would we do this? It is like we are not thinking on our feet. People are stranded with sugarcane. Now they have to take the sugarcane to where? To the north. As if several factories cannot be made nearer us to take care of such things. When you talk about the Abanava Febabula, I mean, that is an understatement. There is this generation, as PP Serufusa has mentioned. I mean, they are lost. But what are we doing about it? Can people come together and think together with the government and find a solution? Because the Ministry of Education alone cannot do it. They need some information from outside, from the users, the end users. So my plea would be for you to advocate for these think tanks to be set up so that we can help the government think through things, because it is an emergency now. It is a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me see if I get all the questions right. I'm going to begin with bottom up. And yes, you make some very, very useful observations right there. What?
Ooh, I'm losing her.
I was muted.
Oh, sorry.
But I'm back now. I'm going to answer these questions from the bottom up. So yeah, you make some very, very good observations. What are we doing about these things as government and as people? And in this session that we're having, it's actually no longer about government. It's about government, us as professionals, us as stakeholders, and every one of us that is involved in this, who can see where the gaps are. We can no longer sit pretty and say that the government is going to come down with a wonderful program, operational wealth creation. No, it is actually time for all of us to work together. And I like a word that you used in there, advocacy. We are going to be training in advocacy. We've been training in advocacy. I was involved in a group that was training the parliamentarians in advocacy last year. It's going to need a lot of advocacy effort to actually bring the plight of the people in education, the plight of the people in agriculture, and all these places, to bring it to the ears of the policy makers. We're going to need a big effort in that area so that we can get to the point of change where we can actually tip things over and policies are made and the right actions taken. I'll just share with you, in my small company, we have plugged into one of those government conversations through someone that I sourced to come and train the people in HR Icon in social enterprise development. Why? Because I wanted to enliven the business platform to feed the social platform. And here's how it was working. So the business platform makes the money, but we have people that are trained on the social platform that we give the money and begin to track their activities, monitoring and evaluating their activities, so that whatever side hustles they're involved in, they're actually using youth that needed employment. Say, youth, to get them to start rearing pigs so that the pigs produce the pork, and then the pork is made into the sausages. The sausages are sold and the money is made and it comes back. And then on the other hand, the business enterprise is funding the people in terms of training and giving them some startup capital as long as we can. And this moved us very squarely and quickly from just a corporate social responsibility mindset to a full focus on how the social enterprise is going to be doing. So these are early days. We started early this year, so that there's a first tier of people that are trained, and then they train the second tier. The second tier that is being trained happens to be in agriculture, because that's the biggest part of our economy. There are people who are involved in rearing the pigs. There are people who are involved in sourcing the shea butter and growing the avocado for all the various social enterprises that are sitting on our socially rooted business model. So that is how we are getting the information from government. We are getting the training. We are having the conversation. So we've created a space where we come to, it's a space that unifies people in business. It's a space that unifies the young people that need training and the people with the funding, especially from the business side, so that we can talk about things that are hurting us. So we can talk about things that are taking us to the next level, and not sit down and wait for people to do something for us. So we've taken back the control and are running quickly in the direction of closing the gap. We don't know how far it's going to go. We don't know exactly how much impact we're going to have within a certain amount of time, because we're only growing the teams and trying to also strengthen the monitoring and evaluation capability that will ensure that whatever is being done, whatever monies are poured from business to social, are actually bringing back returns, so that the two bottom lines, financial performance and human capital performance, are at par. It balances out. It needs to be an equation that balances out. So yeah, so I think that also talks to James Serufusa's production economics and redistribution economics. I'm not an economist, as I said to you guys at the beginning. I'm a human capital development person, HR trained. James, you were there when my training was happening. It's because I live with economists and I talk to economists. That is exactly how I've gotten this mindset. There were a couple of hands that were up. There was Philippa, I see you all the way from Cape Town. Your hand has gone down. I saw your hand
Christine.
up. I see Christine from the UK. Guys.
Yes. Maggie, let me read one question in the chat, then Christine can ask her question. Someone is saying recently the president went to Dubai and donated about 500 million to Ugandans who are working there. What's your comment? And Christine, are you still there to ask your question?
Yes, I am.
Please go ahead.
I am. Okay, it's not really a question as such. Maggie, thank you for the thought-provoking talk. I was just thinking about, when you commented about the children, abana baffe. So I'm just thinking about the 18 to 24-year-olds, probably not in education, not in employment, not in training. And I was just thinking, maybe this is a thought for Rotary clubs in Uganda, probably already doing this. That age group is very prone to mental health issues. So probably we could think about helping them with anxiety and mental health services. I don't know how that can be done because there's a lot of stigma with that. Of course, we've come a long way in Uganda as far as that is concerned, but it's a very big issue for young adults. And also, we should probably think about digital employment and the skills gap, because obviously the way this pandemic has shown us that a lot of employment it's around technology. And obviously, in our country, there's a big gap as far as that is concerned. So how do we look to develop that area? And then maybe it's time to rethink our education model also, because the world has changed a lot, and really and truly we can't be still using the same model that the colonialists left us with. So how do we include, I'm glad that Maggie talked about social enterprise, but how do we include financial education as part of the national curriculum so that people leave school with understanding of money? It's something that's not really taught, yet it's very important. And then also, how do we include apprenticeships, traineeships, and work placements? Companies in Uganda, small or large, the government, are they really including young people into all these? Universities working to see that people are ready to be employed or to be self-employed. And I know that Maggie talked about policy. It's also, I think it's important that we get involved in these policies that are drawn by government, because the decisions they make affect us. So how do we get our foot in the door, so to speak? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. Over to you, Rotarian President Susan.
Thank you very much. I think there was a question that you were asked about Dubai, the president's donation of 500 million to Ugandans in Dubai. Somebody wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Wow, that one has caught me off guard. Yes, I saw that. I was just wondering how this money is actually going to be utilized correctly, because just like operational wealth creation, we need a lot of training in how to ensure that the money we are given is going to be accounted for, the money we are given is going to make a return, the money we are given is actually going to do a full circle or a full cycle back to where we begin, so that there's so many people that gain. That's one of the things we saw with the trainer that came from government to train my people in social enterprise development. We saw that there's actually a big gap, and that for me will always be my concern. The gap in financial literacy, and Christine has just talked about it. Financial literacy, enterprise development, and so many things. And Christine, what I'd like to say is this. You ask so many questions, very pertinent questions, but let's take the question mark out. I think we just need to say, we need to engage with government. We need to go to the policyholders. We need to talk about a new education model. This is the time to talk about financial literacy in the schools. This is the time to talk about mental health. We actually need to take out those questions, give ourselves these assignments, and then begin to work on them. Because if we leave them as questions, everybody's going to think it belongs to somebody out there who is going to do it for us. The good news is recently I met an NGO that is rolling out a psychotherapy. It's a group therapy method for helping people cope with mental health, because right now there are so many, not just in Uganda, but it's all over the world. And it's actually called IPTG. So if there are any psychologists here, you can Google it. So it's being piloted in Uganda and will be scaled up to cover many regions in Uganda, many districts in Uganda. But it's one of the interventions that has come in right now to help the young people, especially that vulnerable group that you speak about, Christine, that between 18 and 24, the ones that are getting lost, the ones that are really perishing, the ones that are hard hittest. It's helping them actually cope with the situations, but helping them mentally and psychosocially is not the end of the whole discussion. We need to get them to plug in to the economy. And so the social enterprise development in terms of redistribution of wealth is one of the things that will help us. Throwing money at youth has not helped. I could reel off, at the risk of my life right now, I could reel off so many failed financial handshakes that the youth have been given. Come here, I give you money. There's a national youth improvement program. There've been so many. They've been given money, but we are still in the same place. They definitely need a hand to hold them and do something about this. I know there are economists out there. There are marketing people out there. There's so many perspectives out there. Please share with us your take on these questions. Over to you. I don't know if I've answered all the questions. Is there a question I've left out?
I think you have done justice to all our questions. Thank you very much. We have 5 minutes to the end of our fellowship, and I'll ask past President Bernadette to give a vote of thanks on behalf of the club. Bernadette, over to you.
Thank you, Madam President, for this honor. I think Christine should have given the appreciation. She started with how Maggie has given us thought-provoking presentation. I think we could not have done any better today, and especially the timing to hear Maggie say what she has said, and for us to start thinking in the way that we are thinking. My only plea is that we should be able to say, how do we take this forward? Because if we are going to listen today and we leave it where it is, then we'll have not appreciated Maggie's thought-provoking presentation. But Maggie, you've done well. You've really stimulated us. And I'm just thinking, which politician should I approach today to tell him what I have learned today, so that he can start holding 2-3 other people, so that we can together be able to carry this forward. It's something that we need to think about. It's something that all of us should be engaged in. And as a club, I'm sure we shall continue to do this through the board or whatever. Now, my other appreciation is, Maggie, now that you have been found, can you please come back to the club? You know, we have also moved on in way of development. We now do things by Zoom. You don't even have to be physically there. And I understand that this is going to continue, that in the future, even if we have meetings, face-to-face meetings, the Zoom will continue. So you really should be able to come back to the club. We miss you, and we know that we can benefit by your presence in the club. With those few words, I would like to say, yes, Maggie, you have grown from where you left us, and thank you for coming to pull us together with you. And we hope that you'll come and stay, and so that we can continue to discuss this as a club on weekly or whatever basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bernadette, I'm going to look for you. Let's look through our list of parliamentarians currently, and let's get going with what we need to do. This is the time to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. It was an honor for me to host you today at the Rotary Club of Kampala West. and also to connect with you after a while. I know, as you mentioned, we've come from so far, and we shall continue with the conversation. We're coming to the end of our fellowship, and I will invite Rotarian Anthony, who will give us a roll call of the clubs. And also I'll recognize the Changemaker presidents who have joined me, Catherine, Paul, and Prosi. Thank you for coming. And also some of the Rotarians we have not seen in a while. Our over on Haley, we have also seen Patrick online. Please come again. And for the final toast, I will ask Changemaker President Catherine Omasa from Port Bell. She'll give us the final toast after a roll call of the clubs. Anthony?
Yes, President, thank you. Today we've been visited by several Rotary clubs, including the Rotary Club of Kampala South, Rotary Club of Portobello, Rotary Club of Kampala North, Rotary Club of Chiwatule, Rotary Club of Namasuba, Rotary Club of Nkumba, Rotary Club of Kasangati, Rotary Club of Kampala Maisha, Rotary Club of Kansanga, Rotary Club of Machindye, Rotary Club of Kampala Springs, Rotary Club of Rubaga, Rotary Club of Nansana, Rotary Club of Kampala Sunrise, and Rotary Club of Ntinda. If you have not had your club, please unmute and mention it. Meanwhile, we've also been visited by the Rotary Club of Kampala West. We welcome our guests from South Africa and our guests from United Kingdom. Thank you for coming, and please come again.
Thank you, Rotarian Anthony, and also Irene, Dr. Irene Nampeo. Thank you for visiting as always. We are counting down, we're looking forward to the time when we will be referring to you as Rotarian Irene. President Catherine, give us the final toast and we will depart.
Thank you very much, Changemaker President Susan, all Rotarians, guests and Rotractors, for this very, very wonderful, thought-provoking presentation and interaction that we've had. Let us all toast to Rotary International.
Rotary world
over. Thank you for coming.
Thank you too. Those who want to remain and chat a bit, feel free to unmute and greet your friends, colleagues, guests. Yeah. And you can also turn on your camera so we see how you look like.
Thank you, President, for the fellowship.
Thank you, Rotarian Marion, for coming.
You're welcome this evening to join us.
I will revenge this evening.
That's my new look.
And thanks to Joanna for always reminding me and sending me the link.
Yeah. Thank you. President Bernadette, I like your new look very, very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Maggie.
Yes.
Come back, President. Come back.
I'm definitely, it's definitely on the table, but it is not very far. The thought is not very far from me, but we need to link up. We definitely